Hello, everyone, and welcome to let's go with the Women's Cave. Yep. Welcome to the Women's Cave. I was going to be like the writer's class because this is a podcaster and she talks about books. So I was like, ooh, writers would love that. But you know something? I lied. I think everyone would like it. So it's going to the In General podcast. This is the problems you have when you have more than one podcast. And in case you're wondering what this blue little thing is that's flapping, it's because I'm having fun and you're not. I'm sorry, no, I'm joking. Okay, so I'm going to do something I never do, but here you guys go. I don't know if you can see it. I'm at the beach. Yes, after all the other podcasts where I was running errands and I was in the car and I was writing a book and I wasn't in the studio, I went, screw it, I'm going to the beach. By the way, I'm alone. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I'm alone. Moving on. We wrote books. And when I say we, I mean the missing Jade. And Jade isn't missing today. She decided to stay in her tent with her personal air conditioner at the beach. I got kicked out. She folded up my chair and was like, goodbye, go do an interview. It is your turn. I don't believe she's had a turn in a while. So I think she owes me like three shows by herself. That's even, right? Yeah, that's even. The books are And I Thought Divorce Was Bad, And I Thought Being Grown Up Was Easy. If only I were me. Wow, my camera lightened up and I can really see where I got a terrible tan on just one side of my face. Widows, Web, Widows, Dead, and Foreign Coffee. You can get those audiobooks wherever audiobooks are sold. And then you know how this goes. There were 6 books and there are 11 more, which means we wrote 17 books. And you can see the rest of the 11 books at andithoughladies.com. You can also see what other things we're up to. Some things we really shouldn't have put up, but you know, it's there. And I don't feel like cleaning up the website. So take a peekaboo. Is that how that is? No, let's take a peek before Jade figures out that I left a bunch of mess up and erases it. You're not here to hear about me. You're here to hear about our wonderful guests. And you know I don't want you to hear about me today. Have you seen the hairstyle that I came out of the hairdresser with today? You're here to hear about our wonderful guests. Wonderful guests, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Yamin, and some 3 fun facts about me is I am living in Tampa, but I was living in New York 14 years, and I decided to move 2 weeks before the pandemic to Chicago, and I spent a year and a half in Chicago staying indoors, and then I was like, oh, I need sunny weather, so I moved to Tampa. So that's one fun fact. The other fun fact is that I have a podcast. It's a book recommendation podcast. It's been going on for about 5 years. I've done about 500 episodes or more, and the list keeps going. And the third fun fact about me is that I'm really good about making internet friends. So I love talking to people and getting to know each other, but I'm also an introvert. So internet friends tend to work well for me.
I love this. First of all, I love the fact that you have a podcast and it's been going for 5 years. I feel like we're podcast twins. Mm-hmm. Yeah, our podcast has been going for just about as long. Yeah, it'll be going on 6 years soon.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I feel like I haven't been successful yet, but again, not about me. This is about you. What made you want to do a podcast?
So this is my 3rd podcast. So I started podcasting in 2015 because I was in a job that I hated, but I discovered podcasts and I was like, oh, I can do this. Like, I can totally do this. And so it was a career podcast about trying to get a different job. So I did that for about 9 months. And at the time, we're interview guests and they were like 45-minute episodes. And I personally hated the editing. So and about unemployment in 2016, I started a different podcast. It was like 15-minute episodes, and they were asking people what to say yes to, like what would step outside of the comfort zone, like what things you would do like you normally wouldn't do. And I love that podcast, but I discovered in that podcast my passion for reading. Like a guest came and told me about books and like recommendations, and I was like hooked with reading again. I was always a reader, but I just became hooked. And so I spent about 2 years reading a book a day. I had a job that allowed me to do that. And so fast forward, I stopped that podcast. That podcast was super popular, but I was like not in it. I was like, I'm just going for the passion. And so a year and a half later, I started the Watch Read Next podcast with my friend. And that was a book recommendation podcast that It started with just one listener the first month, and it has grown over the past couple of years, like to 2020 was a big year for me. And so, yeah, that's been the growth.
Sorry, your podcast is on so many lists about like book lovers. If you're out there, what to read next podcast is like the podcast. So, I mean, you've got to be like feeling great about this.
I feel good about it. It's a lot of work. I don't think about it. I do it because it feels fun. And it's a creative project, and it's something that I just keep going. I try not to bother on the numbers or like the stuff. I just try to like, how do I make genuine conversations? Like that's what I like to do, like genuine relationships, like where I can actually have a conversation with someone, get to know them, and have them talk about books, and just have that passion for books that just help me discover what to read next. Like whenever I'm reading slump, I'm like, oh, I can just edit an episode. I'm like, oh, there's actually this recommendation I can pick up. And so it's self-serving. At the same time, it's been fun.
So, I noticed that on your website, it mentions a nice little blog article on how to work with publishers and request arcs.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a bit about the technical parts of that?
So I would say, number one, it's relationship building. It is not about how many followers you have. It's not about, the expectations. It's about like, how do you build a relationship? So I've been lucky enough to work with pretty much every publisher, like especially in the romance field, like I work with most of them. And so a lot of it starts with just sending an email, to that cold email to that publicist, and saying like, hey, this is the book that I'm interested. Here's how it affects me. Here's what I like about it. Here's how I can promote it. And so it's a lot of it then following up with that publicist and saying like, hey, here's how I feature the book. Because they want to see it, like they want to see the reviews, good or bad. They want to see like you actually have read the book, you enjoy the book. And so it's all relationship. Like I got to the point where I'm like, I get sent a lot of different things, but a lot of times it's because I build a relationship with the publicist, and I'm like, I ask them like, what other titles are you working on? What other things are you working on that I can actually support you? And so it's also like an opportunity to discover new titles and new authors. Like I love working with debut authors because I'm like, they're just unknown. They want to get to know, connect with others, want to share like their books and like their book babies. And so it's all relationship building. A lot of times, like if you're just starting out, the best way to start out is with NetGalley. You get electronic arcs. I would say start with read now, start with like, emailing publicists and be like, hey, I didn't get accepted. I didn't get an arc, but I'm definitely interested in this book because it fits to so-and-so specific, life experience. The publicist may send you an e-arc. That's an easy way to start building that percentage. And then the more you review and request, the more books you get.
Exactly. Okay. I love that you said that you have to make sure that they know that you read the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You got to put in the work to get the book.
You do. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of unpaid labor. Like I want to preface this. This is not like you don't get paid for this. This is just like an opportunity for you to share your book. And so you can share, you don't need to have a blog. You can have a Goodreads account. You can just share reviews on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles. So there's different places where you can share reviews, but you definitely have to read the book. I think when you're starting out, then when you have like a platform in place, you may not read all the books because you get sent a lot. And so there's a different, you may feature them like as a book feature on your Instagram account, or you may feature them like it's an author interview. That's how I actually do a lot of it. I do a lot of author interviews, and so I feature the book that way and have a conversation with the authors. So there's different ways for you to feature the book. But at the beginning, you kind of have to work, and it's a lot of work, and it takes years. It doesn't happen overnight. I think there's expectations like, I have an in with so-and-so publisher, and like, I'm like, I actually work my butt off to get to that end with that publisher. Like it was a lot of like, featuring a lot of different art, different books and different things. And it may not be the A-list books that you wanted to go. It's like also featuring the smaller mid-list books that are just as good, and you might be surprised.
I noticed Okay, there were so many questions I really wanted to ask about like you working with the authors, and I loved, and I have to find a better word because I am a writer, but I absolutely loved when you were like, it takes years, y'all, it takes years. It takes so many years to develop a relationship and get the trust and everything. Well, y'all know about relationships. Let's move on about real relationships because, well, let's see, real relationships on the pages of books, because I believe, if I read this correctly, you love reading romance books.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming you have to be a romance author to be on your podcast, or can you be another genre?
No, I actually have feature authors in other areas. Like I had, White Fantasy. I had Cassandra Clara come on the show. We talked about romance, of course. I've had Karen Slaughter and Liv Constantine, who are authors of thrillers. They've come on the show. So it's not, I'm open to it. Like I primarily have romance and women's fiction because that's the bread and butter of what I read. However, if there's sometimes you get a palate cleanser, and sometimes you just want to like you're done with it happily ever after. So you're like, okay, I need like a thriller just to get back, So I feature authors from other genres just because it definitely helps you kind of like broaden. The other part is that my show is almost a daily show. So like that's why it allows me to have more authors because I have so many interviews.
I was thinking about questions I wanted to ask you after you were talking. So when you stopped, I was like, oh crap, I thought you had one more sentence left. One more. But fortunately for me, I had a question ready. How did you get in touch with these authors? Was this through the publisher, or did you have to reach out with them when you first started? And how did that go?
So it was a mix. When I was started in 2018, I reached out to indie authors. There were the ones where I was reading, and there was a lot of no's. There were a lot of like, I don't understand this medium. And so this is 2018, like podcasts were around, but they were not around with the bookish community. They're not the explosion they are right today. And so I decided in 2019 to start reaching out to Publicists because I figure, well, they wanted to get earned media. They want to get free media exposure. My podcast is a media exposure. And so I started with Publicists, and I was doing like pretty much any author. Like I was not, I was doing one episode a week, and I was just like, whatever you were able to give me, that's what I was taking. And I did that for about, I would say 9 months. And then March 2020 happened, and there was like no events. Like there was no events, there were no book tours, there were no things. And so Publicists were like, oh my gosh, we need to sell these books, and like, what can we do? And so I had an explosion of publicists who really reach out to me and were like, can they be on the podcast? And so I started with like, a couple episodes a week, and then it snowballed to 5 episodes a week. And it was like pretty much, I started working with pretty much every romance imprint. And then indies were PR companies. A lot of indies had authors work with PR companies. So I started working with Valentine, and then they were starting to send me indies because I told them my issue with indies was like they kept saying no. So I wanted to have the platform for them, but they just kept telling me no. And so I needed to have somebody else to sell that the podcast as a platform. Now it's a different space. I think there's a lot of romance podcasts out there. And so the authors are more comfortable doing author interviews. There's more space for that. And so there's less of a selling point of like, here's where you should be. Like I actually get a lot of yeses now. While in the past I used to get a lot of no's.
Oh, we've come to this point since, you were talking about yeses and nos. And I have to say, I'm kind of surprised that I have a podcast host on, and I have done segue after segue after segue. We do not do segues here. I'm really proud of me. I think it's the beach. I think it has calmed me down. Unfortunately, this hairstyle makes me look so atrociously unattractive. So I'm scared. And yes, if you're listening to the podcast, I would prefer that you don't go over to YouTube and see the video. But if you must see the atrociously unattractive video, go ahead. Come to the section, and I'm going to segue here. You were saying you hear no's after no after no, and now you hear yeses. I just want you to know over here it'll be a yes. So just feel free to contact us. I bet you don't even know what we write, so let me tell you. We write poetry. So yeah, anyway. Yeah. Yeah, that I love that because everyone's like, oh my goodness, it was a fun. Oh, poetry, do you say?
Well, I would love to have you on the show. So we'll chat offline, but I would love to have you on the show.
Oh, you really don't have to. Don't feel pressured.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah. It's a bit that we do about the narcissism. Oh, wait, I just let out a whole secret. I'm glad Jade is in a tent at the beach further away. Okay. So where can people, oh no, before I ask you that final question, I have to ask, do you ever think you will stop sitting in the hosting chair and be the interviewee because you wrote a book?
I don't think so. I think I want to write a book. I know there's a book that I wanted to do. It's a rom-com set in Puerto Rico because there's not a lot of books set in Puerto Rico, and that's where I'm from. But writing it right now, it's not the priority. But that's something that maybe in the future it will be there. It's just I got other projects in the works. But yeah, there's a rom-com set in Puerto Rico that I sort of it's marinating in my head, and it may come, in the future.
I heard there are other projects. Did we get to hear about some of them?
So there's more blogging. There's more. There might be a YouTube channel. So moving the podcast to YouTube, that's something that I'm working on. And there's a recipe blog that I'm planning to do with my mom. So I think that's where I'm actually leaning towards that because I want to connect with my culture. So we're doing Puerto Rican recipes. So.
Okay, I'm there for the Puerto Rican recipes. Just tell me the blog. I would love to get it as a TikTok.
Yeah, so I think that's the immediate project that we're working on is working on the back end because I have to translate her recipes. So I was telling a friend today, she's like, do you have a recipe for guava cake? And I was like, yes, I do. I just need to translate it. So yeah, that's probably gonna be the next project.
Okay. I'm gonna say for the YouTube thing, please do that. Oh, I would love to. You're so entertaining with your guest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to see what's really going on. And besides, I mean, when you have us on, I'm not gonna be having this hairstyle, so I love to look at me later. I'm joking. Definitely YouTube. Spotify does video, right?
Yep. Yeah, so video is gonna be the next area. I've been playing around with Instagram Lives, and so I've been doing a lot of video Instagram Lives, and so I don't love the platform for Instagram, so that's probably gonna translate to YouTube, to do more live, more live interviews.
Okay, we have to talk because I think we should try something. If you want to work with that, you don't know us from Adam, let's work together.
Yeah, I love that
online friend thing, right?
Honestly, this is how I make friends. It's by doing these type of things. I'm like, I think we have something in common, So yeah.
So where can people listen to this podcast?
They can listen to Spotify, Apple, anywhere you can find your podcast. You can look for What to Read Next, or you can look for my name, Yamin. Both of them it pops up, and you can search for your favorite author, and chances are there might be an author interview. And the episodes are 10 to 15 minutes long, so they're easy to binge.
And then where can people follow you if they want to?
They can follow me on Instagram, What to Read Next Pod, or I think on TikTok, What to Read Next Pod too.
Oh, I should have said what I'm trying to get was your website.
Oh, my website. Oh, sorry. My website is whattonextblog.com.
Okay. See, no, that's my responsibility. The host is supposed to ask good question. I used to blow my brain power on good segues. That last question was I'm done. Oh crap, I have more questions. One more question. All right, you guys. So since you heard about, I'm sorry, not you guys, y'all, because I'm Southern. So all right, y'all. Since you heard about where you can find her, probably want to check us out at some point, and you can check out everything your ladies are doing at www.andithoughtLadies.com. And when you go to that, you can go down to the middle of the page and see the charities that we proudly support. We ask that you give them a little time, a little love right now, because it's difficult for everyone. And we thank you in advance for that. Remember that wisdom is all around you if you're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Winona and the missing sitting in the tent with her feet up on a footrest, Jade. Bye-bye.